At 5:42 on a cold Tuesday morning, my phone rang so hard it rattled off the kitchen counter and hit the floor before I could even grab it. And when I answered, half asleep, the woman on the other end said, "Sir, we receive an emergency complaint that you are illegally occupying private property and refusing to leave." I remember staring out the window on my own damn barn while the dispatcher kept talking, steam rising off my coffee, horses already moving through the fog like ghosts, and thinking, well, hell, that's a new one. Then the dispatcher read the address out loud, my address, and something deep in my chest went cold, because I already knew exactly who made that call. Her name was Vanessa Halbrook, president of the Cedar Ridge Estates, HOA, queen of fake smiles and neighborhood terror, a woman who wore pastel designer suits to intimidate people buying mulch at Home Depot. And apparently, sometime between Monday night and sunrise Tuesday morning, she had decided my ranch belonged to her son now. My name's Wyatt Mercer. I've lived out in Blackstone County most of my life, and for the last 21 years, I've worked law enforcement. Though back then Vanessa didn't know that part yet. To her, I was just some stubborn rancher standing in the way of her family's plans. And maybe if things had been different, maybe if my younger brother hadn't needed that land to stay alive, maybe she could have pushed me out like everybody else. But this place wasn't just property to us. It was the first peaceful thing my brother Luke had touched since Afghanistan hollowed him out from the inside. See, Luke came home with one leg gone and the rest of him not much better. Nightmares every night, panic attacks in grocery stores. Couldn't hear fireworks without diving for cover. Doctors kept feeding him pills like they were trying to sedate a wildfire. Nothing worked. Then 5 years ago, I bought that ranch just outside Cedar Ridge Estates. 52 acres of open pasture, oak trees, horses, silence, real silence. And little by little, Luke started breathing again. First thing that came back was sleep, then appetite. Then one morning I caught him laughing at something stupid one of the goats did, and I nearly cried standing there beside the feed trough. That ranch saved my brother's life, which is why what happened next still makes my blood boil when I think about it. The trouble started small. That's how people like Vanessa operate. They don't kick your door down first. They test your boundaries, see how much you'll tolerate before you push back. One morning I found fresh ATV tracks tearing through my east pasture. Fence wire bent down, mud thrown everywhere, cattle spooked half to death. I figured maybe some drunk teenager from the subdivision got brave after midnight. Fixed the fence myself, didn't think much of it. Then it happened again 3 days later. Only this time somebody cut the wire clean through with bolt cutters. Luke found it during his morning walk. And when I came outside, he was just standing there staring at the broken fence like he'd seen a body. His hand was shaking so bad, he couldn't even light a cigarette. That's the thing people don't understand about trauma. Sometimes it ain't the big things that break you. Sometimes it's just knowing your safe place isn't safe anymore. So I put cameras up. Professional trail cams, infrared, motion activated, the kind hunters use to track coyotes. And buddy, those cameras caught a whole lot more than coyotes. First night showed a black ATV ripping through my property around 2 a.m. Driver wore a hoodie, but when he stopped near the barn and pulled the helmet off, I recognized him instantly. Travis Halbrook. Vanessa Halbrook, 33 years old, permanently angry, recently divorced, and somehow always carrying the energy of a guy who'd punched drywall after losing fantasy football. The footage showed him cruising around my ranch, slow and deliberate, taking pictures of the barn, the well system, the equipment shed. Not joyriding. Studying, like a man casing a bank before robbing it. I watched 3 nights of footage back-to-back sitting alone at my kitchen table while Luke slept down the hall. By the 4th night, Travis brought surveying tools. Stakes, measuring chains, 2 other guys with construction vests. That's when I realized this wasn't vandalism anymore. This was planning. And right about the time I came to that conclusion, Vanessa Halbrook decided to knock on my front door herself. She stepped out of a pearl white Range Rover wearing heels that sank into the dirt every 3 steps. Oversized sunglasses, expensive perfume floating through the air like chemical warfare. She looked around my ranch the way rich people look at old furniture they plan to replace. "Mr. Mercer," she said, smiling like a snake warming itself on a rock, "I think there's been a misunderstanding about this property." I leaned against the porch rail. "Funny, I was just thinking the same thing." Her smile tightened a little then. "My son needs this land for a family development project tied to his custody arrangement. We're prepared to make a generous offer. It's not for sale. Everything is for sale, Mr. Mercer." I remember glancing past her toward Luke's horse grazing near the fence line, and something inside me settled hard as concrete. "Not this," I said quietly. Vanessa stared at me for a long second, then gave this little laugh under her breath like I was too stupid to understand how the world worked. "You really should think carefully before making enemies of people with resources." And right there, standing in my own driveway with a morning wind pushing dust across my boots, I realized this woman wasn't asking. She already believed she owned my ranch. She just hadn't figured out yet why taking it was about to become the biggest mistake of her life. The next week felt like living beside a rattlesnake. Every morning you stepped outside, wondering if today was finally the day it struck. Vanessa didn't come back right away after that little driveway conversation, but people like her don't retreat when you tell them no. They reorganize. They regroup. They start calling lawyers. 3 days later, I came home from a 12-hour shift and found official court documents folded inside my screen door. Family court filings, temporary land use petition, child welfare accommodation request. I actually laughed reading it at first because it was so ridiculous it sounded fake. According to the paperwork, Travis supposedly needed my ranch to create a stable therapeutic environment for his children during a custody dispute. Not just any land either, my land specifically. Apparently 52 acres beside Cedar Ridge Estates was somehow essential to the emotional development of 3 kids he barely raised in the first place. Luke sat across from me at the kitchen table while I read through the documents, his coffee trembling slightly in his hand. "Can they do that?" he asked quietly. I looked at him for a long second before answering. "They can try." What bothered me wasn't the lawsuit itself. It was how carefully constructed it was. Vanessa knew exactly which emotional buttons to push. Children, family stability, mental health. She weaponized compassion like a damn professional. And the worst part? It almost worked. The county appointed a property evaluator that Thursday morning, a woman named Claire Donnelly. Smart lady, mid-50s maybe, practical boots, sharp eyes, the kind of person who notices details without announcing it. She spent nearly 4 hours walking the ranch with me, while Luke repaired fencing nearby. She asked thoughtful questions too, not just about land value, but about daily life, routines, emotional attachment. "Your brother seems calmer out here," she observed while Luke brushed one of the horses near the barn. "He is," I said. "First place he's slept through the night in years." She nodded slowly, and that's when I handed her the tablet containing the trail cam footage. Claire watched Travis ripping through my property after midnight, watched him hammer survey stakes into my pasture, watched him photographing my buildings like a developer preparing blueprints. Halfway through the footage, she lowered the tablet and stared out toward the tree line. "Mr. Mercer," she said carefully, "why haven't you filed charges?" I remember smiling a little into my coffee cup, because sometimes it's better to let people keep digging. She looked at me differently after that, less like a rancher being harassed, more like a man waiting for the right moment to spring a trap. And maybe she sensed there was more to me than flannel shirts and fence posts. By Saturday, things escalated again. 3 black SUVs rolled onto my property around noon, throwing dust halfway to the barn. Out stepped Vanessa, Travis, 2 lawyers, and a giant bald guy wearing sunglasses who looked less like security and more like a nightclub bouncer with a felony record. Travis walked around my ranch grinning like he already owned it. That smile, Man, I still remember that smile. The kind rich bullies where when they mistake patience for weakness. Vanessa's attorney, some shark named Elliot Crane, opened a leather briefcase on my porch and slid paperwork toward me like we were closing a casino deal. $3.2 million, he said. Cash purchase. Immediate transfer. All legal expenses covered. Luke nearly choked hearing the number. Truth is, for half a second, even I felt it hit me. That kind of money changes lives. But then I looked over at my brother standing near the barn with that old nervous tension crawling back in his shoulders, and I realized exactly what they were counting on. They thought everyone breaks eventually. Everyone has a price once the pressure gets high enough. Not interested, I said. Travis actually laughed out loud. Come on, man. It's a ranch, not the damn Alamo. To you, maybe. That irritated him instantly. You could see in his face the switch flipping behind his eyes. Guys like Travis grow up hearing yes their whole lives, so the word no feels personal. Dangerous, even. Vanessa stepped closer then, lowering her voice like we were sharing some private understanding between adults. Mr. Mercer, you need to understand something. Development is coming whether you cooperate or not. You can either walk away wealthy or get buried under legal problems until this place bleeds you dry. I smiled a little. That's supposed to scare me. Her attorney answered instead. Environmental compliance reviews, agricultural tax reassessments, easement disputes, utility access petitions. You'd be surprised how expensive rural property becomes once government agencies start taking interest. And there was the real threat finally stepping into daylight. Not just lawsuits, systematic pressure, death by paperwork. They planned to suffocate me financially until surrender felt easier than fighting. Before I could answer, Luke suddenly spoke from behind me. Quiet voice, calm voice. Honestly, it shocked me hearing him cut in at all. My brother already buried enough people overseas, he said. You really think paperwork's going to scare him? Travis turned toward him slowly, smiling again. Only this smile was uglier. You know, he said casually, it'd be a shame if all that stress messed with your recovery. I took one step forward so fast the bald bodyguard shifted position automatically. Careful, I said softly. Travis held my stare for maybe 3 seconds before looking away first. And that told me everything I needed to know about him. Bullies love vulnerable people. They hate resistance. The next morning, somebody destroyed my irrigation system. Not random damage, either. Surgical destruction. Main water lines cut clean through. Fence posts snapped at the base. One of my cameras ripped down and submerged in mud. Luke found the damage before sunrise, and by the time I reached the pasture, he was sitting in the dirt, breathing hard like he couldn't get enough air into his lungs. PTSD episodes don't always look dramatic like in movies. Sometimes it's just a man staring at broken fence wire while his brain quietly drags him back into a war zone. I sat beside him in the mud a while before either of us spoke. Finally he asked, "You think they'll stop?" I remember looking across the destroyed pasture towards Cedar Ridge Estates, glowing in the distance with all its manicured lawns and decorative street lamps. And I realized the answer before I even opened my mouth. No, I said honestly, not until somebody makes them. That night Travis came to the ranch alone, knocked on my door around 9, carrying a six-pack like we were neighbors settling a misunderstanding. Heard about the vandalism, he said. Thought maybe we should talk man to man. I let him stand on the porch while I leaned against the doorway. Funny timing. Look, my mom gets intense sometimes, but this doesn't have to become a war. Bit late for that. Travis sighed dramatically, then glanced out toward the pasture. You really want to spend the next few years fighting people with money, connections, lawyers? Over dirt. It ain't dirt. He shook his head like I was hopelessly naive. You know what your problem is, Wyatt? You think the world still works on principles. Then he smiled again, that same rotten little smile. But eventually everybody learns leverage matters more. And right there, in that exact moment, I finally understood what this whole thing really was. Not custody, not family, not even land. It was power. Travis and Vanessa got addicted to controlling people a long time ago, and my ranch became the first thing that ever refused to kneel. After he left, I sat alone at the kitchen table replaying every conversation in my head while rain tapped softly against the windows. Then around midnight, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Thank God I didn't. A woman's voice whispered, "Is this Wyatt Mercer?" Depends who's asking. Long pause. Then she said something that changed everything. "My name is Elena Cross, and Travis Halbrook destroyed my life before he came after yours." I stayed on the phone with Elena Cross until almost 2 in the morning, rain still sliding down the kitchen windows while Luke slept in the next room and the horses shifted quietly out in the barn. Her voice had that exhausted edge people get after surviving someone too long. Calm on the surface, but frayed underneath if you listen carefully. She told me Travis had pulled the exact same stunt in Arizona 2 years earlier. Different property, different owner, same strategy. Harassment, fake legal pressure, anonymous vandalism. Then once the owners got overwhelmed enough, developers magically appear with offers. "It's never about custody," she said softly. "That's just the costume they wear." Turns out Travis had been trying to turn my ranch into a luxury event property. Wedding venues, cabin rentals, corporate retreats. The kind of fake country experience rich people pay thousands for so they can wear cowboy boots twice a year and post filtered sunset photos online. Elena even sent screenshots from old business proposals Travis pitched to investors. My land circled in red. Profit projections. Construction phases. Estimated resale value. Reading through those files, I felt something strange settle over me. Not anger anymore. Clarity. Because once you understand what somebody really wants, you stop reacting emotionally and start thinking strategically. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I stopped feeling hunted. By Thursday, I had everything I needed. Camera footage, threat recordings, property damage reports, Elena's documentation, witness statements from neighboring ranchers Travis had also harassed. And meanwhile, the Halbrooks still thought they were winning. That was the beautiful part. They had absolutely no idea who they were actually dealing with. See, I never hid the fact I worked law enforcement. I just never volunteered specifics either. Most folks around Blackstone County knew me as Wyatt from the ranch. Quiet guy, keeps to himself, helps during storms, fixes fences for older neighbors. Vanessa never once bothered asking deeper questions because people like her only investigate people they consider important. And in her mind, I wasn't important. Friday evening, Travis made his biggest mistake. One of my repositioned trail cams caught him and 2 contractors driving utility vehicles along my east fence line after dark. They were carrying hydraulic cutters, trench tools, electrical equipment, serious sabotage gear. I watched the footage sitting beside Luke in total silence while the screen glowed against the dark kitchen. Then Travis said something on the recording that made my brother slowly lower his coffee cup. "Cut the water system first," Travis told the contractors. "Then the power to the barn. If this place becomes expensive enough to maintain, he'll fold." Luke looked over at me carefully. "What now?" I stood up, grabbed my truck keys, and finally told him the truth I'd been sitting on for weeks. "Now," I said calmly, I stopped being patient. Saturday night came warm and clear, one of those quiet Texas nights where sound travels forever. Crickets humming, wind rolling through tall grass. The kind of peaceful darkness city people don't understand anymore. Around 11:30 p.m., headlights appeared near the eastern fence line, exactly where I knew they would. Travis rode his ATV ahead, while the contractors followed behind in a utility vehicle loaded with equipment. They moved confidently, too, comfortable, experienced. Men who believed consequences belonged to other people. What they didn't know was half the sheriff's department already surrounded the property, waiting in blackout positions. Because about 6 hours earlier, I'd finally made a few official phone calls. Travis crossed the irrigation ditch first, same route he'd used for weeks during his little nighttime invasions. But this time the temporary bridge wasn't built to hold the kind of speed and weight he hit it with. The collapse sounded like a shotgun blast in the dark. Metal snapped. Wood cracked. Then came this enormous splash, followed immediately by Travis screaming like a man who just discovered physics doesn't care how rich your mother is. Deputies moved in before he even climbed halfway out of the ditch. Flashlights exploded across the pasture from every direction. Sheriff's Department. Hands where we can see them. The contractors froze instantly. Smart man. Travis, meanwhile, stood waist-deep in muddy irrigation water, losing his damn mind. "You psychopath," he screamed at me while deputies dragged him toward dry ground. "You set me up." I walked toward him slowly through the pasture, boots crunching over gravel, emergency lights flashing red and blue across the barn behind me. "No," I said calmly. "I gave you every chance to stay off my property." Then came the moment I'll probably remember for the rest of my life. Vanessa's white Range Rover came flying down the driveway, maybe 10 minutes later, tires spraying dirt everywhere. She jumped out still wearing silk pajamas under a trench coat, screaming before the vehicle even stopped moving. "I want him arrested immediately," she shouted at the deputies. "This lunatic attacked my son." Then she saw me standing beside the patrol trucks wearing my sheriff's jacket, badge visible under the floodlights. And buddy, I have seen murder suspects look less shocked. Her entire face changed, like watching a building collapse in slow motion. She whispered. "You're the sheriff?" I nodded once. Been sheriff of Blackstone County for 21 years. Absolute silence hit that pasture for maybe 3 full seconds, except for Travis cursing in the background while deputies cuffed him beside the ditch. Vanessa looked around wildly, like reality itself had betrayed her. Every threat, every false report, every intimidation tactic, every fake lawsuit, all directed at the one man in the county who had the authority, evidence, and patience to bury her legally. And deep down, she knew it. The news crews showed up before sunrise. Somebody from Cedar Ridge Estates leaked the story fast, and by morning the whole county knew exactly what happened. They aired the footage too. Travis trespassing, the sabotage plans, Vanessa threatening me on my own porch. Elena Cross gave interviews exposing the custody lies and previous scams. By Monday, the Halbrooks weren't feared anymore. They were radioactive. Travis took a plea deal 6 months later. Felony trespassing, conspiracy, destruction of property. The contractors rolled on him immediately. Vanessa lost her HOA position, then her law license not long after. Turns out judges really don't appreciate wealthy attorneys weaponizing family court for land fraud schemes. Funny how that works. But honestly, none of that ended up mattering as much as I thought it would. Because the best part came later. A few months after everything settled down, Luke started helping other veterans at the ranch. Just informal at first. Coffee on the porch, horseback riding, bonfires at night, where nobody had to explain why certain sounds still made them flinch. Then more veterans started showing up. Then families. Then donations. Eventually we turned the ranch into a full recovery retreat for combat vets struggling with PTSD. Sometimes I sit out there at sunset watching those guys laugh around the fire pit while horses move through the pasture and wind pushes through the trees, and I think about how close we came to losing all of it to greed disguised as entitlement. That's the thing nobody tells you about bullies. They usually win because decent people get tired before they do. They count on exhaustion, fear, isolation. But every once in a while, they push somebody too far. And when that happens, the whole game changes. So now I want to ask you something. If somebody came after your home, your family, the one place in the world that helps somebody you love survive, how far would you go to protect it? And do you think Vanessa and Travis got what they deserved? Or did I go too far once I decided to fight back? Let me know down in the comments, because honestly, people around Blackstone County still argue about that part to this day.